At Nagy. We're looking further into this situation and its similarities to the Lackawanna 6. We have Peter Ahern, former special agent in Buffalo FBI, on the phone with us. First question for you, Mr. Ahern, is there any connection between Arafat Nagy and the Lackawanna 6?
Well, there were connections back in the day. Obviously, there's no connections now. You look in the complaint, they talk about U.S. person number 1, U.S. person number 2. It's pretty obvious somebody in there on U.S. person number 1, if I believe I'm correct on that, was cited as a former convicted terrorism association, some type of case. Could be somebody in that group. But, yeah, we knew about Arafat Nagy and dealt with Arafat Nagy back in the Lackawanna case in 2001 and more so, obviously, in 2002.
What did you know about him at the time as you were following those men, the two men who you believe recruited the Lackawanna 6 and those other men? What did you know about Arafat Nagy at the time?
Well, he was one of the originals back in the day when the recruiters were in town trying to recruit. Arafat Nagy was supposed to be going on the second trip that would have been going over to the recruiting camps back in the day, but again, that all fell apart with the attacks of 9/11. He was on the radar, and actually the night of the arrests, he was interviewed, and, you know, some funny stories about Nagy. I mean, I think he was a wannabe back then and was never able to get any traction. Some of the people in the Lackawanna case wouldn't even talk to him anymore. But he was interviewed, and I'm kind of surprised he's shown up again now because he knows how he works, how the FBI works. He knows he was looked at and got away, not got away, but wasn't really a target of our investigation after we interviewed him back in 2002.
You say not got away. He hadn't done anything up to that point that would have required charges.
He was deemed not a threat, not part of it. He was lucky, honestly, that he never went over to the camps. But he tried to make contact with Kamal Derwish back in the day, trying to get arrangements. He kept trying to go to the camps after 9/11.
So what's different now? The difference between what we knew as Al-Qaeda then and what we now know as ISIS and the threat of people here trying to join these terrorist organizations?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, after the years had gone by, we knew Nagy had moved. My recollection, again, and it fades, was that he had moved to the Detroit area after the Lackawanna case. So he was never off the radar. I'm sure that we've had him in systems and everything, and things that started to develop since 2012 with the investigation. He was somebody that was being looked at because of what happened. You have that transition now from the Al-Qaeda to the ISIS as the years have gone by with this now not so new terrorism threat. And I think what we have here is somebody that now has fixated on that and the Syrian issues, the Yemen issues, and found something that he can then channel whatever rage he might have into. And he was susceptible to the recruiting from the standpoint of he was recruited in the past and always wanted to be part of something like that.
So how do you think that change has influenced him? Do you think it was just because things were relatively quiet in the time since the Lackawanna 6 were arrested to now the renewal of ISIS in that form, and that's what's triggered this for Mr. Nagy?
Well, it looks like that when you read the complaint. You know, he just shifted to what is the so-called flavor of the month, which is ISIS or ISIL. And as you can see in that complaint, as his discontent started to get more and more, it was looking like he was probably going to go over there and join the fight.
You do see in the complaint that he says, according to the conversations they took off of his phone, I wanted to help the Syrian people. I feel for them. My heart bleeds for them. Now, Mr. Ahern, what do you think the difference is in terms of trying to file these charges or prosecute someone like this now, so many years later? When the Lackawanna 6 were arrested, it seems it was fairly easy to obtain warrants to monitor phone conversations and arrest warrants as well. How has that changed over the years?
Well, it was never easy, quite frankly. I think one of the biggest tools that we had at the time, we were one of the first divisions of the FBI to use it, was the Patriot Act, where, you know, you have two phases of investigations. Back in the day, you had an intelligence collection responsibility that the FBI has, and then you had the criminal responsibility. And back in the day, they were very separate. Now with the Patriot Act, those are together, and I think what you've had over the years was an intelligence collection operation that was ongoing just in general on any ISIS threats and any information being picked up using the tools of the National Security Agency, looking at people overseas and coming up with leads. But back in the day, it just wasn't easy. It's the same process today. You still have to get the warrants. You still might, on the interception capabilities. The biggest change is coming now, and a very, very big concern is what will happen as the days go by with the encryption of the ability for law enforcement to lawfully collect the information when they have a predicated act of somebody, in this case like Nagy, to be able to get that information that you see cited in that complaint. It's going to be very, very difficult as the encryption capabilities start to exceed the capabilities of law enforcement. That is a very big concern, and I don't think the American people really understand how threatening that could be.
So it's not just a matter of how difficult it is to even obtain the warrants. Now it's a matter of technology and those challenges.
Yes, absolutely. The technology moves faster than the law, unfortunately, and in this whole world of cyber, the laws are not keeping up with what's going to be needed. And, people think that the FBI, the NSA, and some of these other agencies just wave a magic wand and collect anything that they want to do, and that's not necessarily the case anymore.
What about the ease?
I'm just very worried that something's going to happen where law enforcement and the intel community is going to basically say, look, could have had it, but we couldn't intercept it.
That is Peter Ahern, who was a former FBI special agent. He was in charge of the Buffalo office. He was involved in the Lackawanna 6 investigation. Thank you so much, Mr. Ahern, for joining us on the phone.